to episode 14 of Up the Waterfall podcast.
Very cool.
With your hosts, Zanna and Scott Otis.
Hello.
Where we take a journey up the waterfall of Disney parks, history, facts, and nostalgia with a present day twist. Thank you for joining us today. As always, please keep your hands and arms inside the tram at all times. And let's enjoy the ride.
Indeed.
And that little intro is a hint as to what our topic is, although you probably know, having pressed play on some form or another of this show. But we are talking today about the current Disney Hollywood Studios, formerly Disney MGM Studios, which is the main component of our memories, I believe.
It is.
And things that we miss about that once magical park.
It was a fun time.
It was. And I've told you this already, but I will say it again. My role here today is basically to spout off my nostalgic memories of things that may or may not be historically correct. And you get to correct my nomenclature that I may have forgotten, or what was actually happening, or when it was happening.
I'll do my best, but I know that you absolutely have things to contribute.
Well, yeah. I mean, major things. I just don't know how
it's
accurate
not more
they'll
than
be.
just nostalgia, I guess is what I mean.
But this was a major time for you to be going to the parks like all the time, right around when this opened, because that's when you moved down here and started working.
Yes,
other
than Animal Kingdom, which I was there the day of its opening, this is the one park that I was there the closest to its opening, which was, it opened in May 1st, 1989, and my first visit there was May of 1990. So a full year, but starting in May of 1990, I was going like every day for 3 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, this time frame of my life was not me visiting the parks all the time, because it was in 1987. Let's see. No, I guess it was before. Yeah, 87. When I was in 8th grade, we moved from Ocala to Lynchburg, Virginia, for some reason. I have no idea why. We sold our homemade ice cream shop that was named after me. My parents like to move around a lot. And moved there to open a restaurant, which we opened in Appomattox, Virginia, where the Civil War ended.
That's right.
But it was still going on in some places. Anyway, so they had a little country restaurant, and they expanded from doing just ice cream to doing like a full restaurant. So anyway, we did not, it wasn't like an hour away anymore.
Right,
so.
You were taking occasional trips.
Right. I'm pretty sure we still went there every summer that we were up there.
Right.
So in the summer of 89, we went for the first time. And my father was a very big, old Hollywood buff and
very
fan. Cool. He loved old movies. He loved old musicals. He loved Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly and that whole thing.
That's
so
awesome.
Going to the park with him was really, a treat if you were into that kind of thing, which I was.
That sounds very cool,
It was fun to hear, this is from this, and he would hear the background music and know what movies they were from, and it was really fun to see all the little details and things like that. And of course, I had never been to Hollywood, and I wasn't really into old movies. I still haven't seen a lot of old movies, but everyone I have seen, for the most part, I've really liked, and think I should watch more of these.
Yeah, there's some good stuff out there that I need to show you. And I actually grew up close to Hollywood in Southern California, but even though I was in Orange County growing up, we never actually ventured over to Hollywood, so I was probably just as distant from Hollywood as you were. I never went to any of the backstage tours or anything like that growing up there, even though I probably should have.
Weird.
But I never did. I guess I was stuck going to Disneyland all the time.
Yes. And as I love to always say this, the Disney MGM Studios Park was, as Michael Eisner called it, the Hollywood that always was and never will be, which is still on the plaque.
Yeah, I know. That was the idea of this park. His original intent was to have it be an extra pavilion in Epcot, but then they thought, well, there's certainly a lot more room to expand. A lot, people just did not really know about all the, the backstage stuff about the making of movies and television and all that. like we do now.
Yeah.
So all of that was a relatively new concept. So, this certainly had the bearings to be a full park, and which is what they did.
Yeah, and they certainly intended it to be a working studio.
Yes, they did.
But that didn't really last too long.
But it's also the park that has probably been through the most changes of any park by far.
Yeah,
if you think about it, the park, the kind of like when it opened, it had the great movie ride. It had the full backstage tour, both the tram portion and the walking portion. It had the animation tour, and then it had the twin attractions of Superstar Television and the Monster Sound Show. And those 5 big things, that was the bulk of what that park had when it opened.
Was Indiana Jones?
And yes, and of course Indiana Jones, and that one is still there. But those other 5, in all honesty, are just plain old and not there at all anymore. So this park has been through the most changes, so there's a lot to look back on.
It is crazy, and yet, when you walk into the park, that part hasn't really changed too much.
That's true, yeah. There's a lot of the buildings that are the same.
Yeah,
so.
and I mean, inside the buildings a lot of them have just been recently remodeled. Of course, now there's a Starbucks there, and they finally took down the hat. And we've had that great view of the great movie ride, and now the great movie ride is no more.
But the hat wasn't there when the park opened.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, visually,
yes,
things have
brought it back to its splendor.
Yeah.
So let's dive.
We can dive right in. But as I was saying, like, the main portion of when you first walk in is like you're walking down Hollywood Boulevard.
Exactly.
And I wrote about this on my blog one time. I've done a few posts on my memories of Disney MGM Studios, which we'll link to.
Yes.
I probably need to update some of those. But when we did the D23 Great Scavenger Hunt,
oh yes,
I may be getting the name wrong.
It was part
the
of
one
the
and only
Destination D,
Walt Disney World Scavenger Hunt, which took place over 3 days?
2 days.
2 days?
Yeah, it was 2 parks per day.
Oh my gosh.
Over 2 days.
In the middle of
summer, the hottest time of all. Yes.
That was Crazy Town, USA, and I was still living outside of Tampa at that point, so I was like driving super early to get there, and I did it with Nicole, my friend Nicole, and Shelly, and it was kind of crazy. When we ran into you and your Lou team a few times.
Lou and I, we joined forces, and we did all right.
Yeah. We didn't do so well, I don't think. I have no memory of how we did. But anyway, my point was, in that scavenger hunt, you had to find a lot of very obscure clues and things in all of the parks. And it really, for this park especially, made me stop and look in all the windows, look at all the signs. And that and Animal Kingdom, which, I already loved Animal Kingdom as well, but the detail that was on like New York Street and all those shops, which are now sadly gone, was really cool. So, but there's still some level of.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember a couple of things. First off, kind of doing a tour of both Hollywood Boulevard and Sunset Boulevard about the buildings that are there and the buildings that they were all modeled after in existing Hollywood and the areas.
Which honestly, I had never ever thought about.
It is amazing.
Until I went to California. And honestly, I guess I always knew about the Carthay Circle Theater because of the Snow White history. But I never thought about like, oh, that's what that's based on until we went to California, and at DCA it's a restaurant there.
Right. But what I was also going to say is that I also remember doing a different tour that kind of highlighted all of the kind of the Walt Disney hidden kind of tributes to him specifically that were hidden all throughout all of the different places.
Yeah.
So, so basically, the fact is that when that park opened, there was, it was more than just Disney, because Disney wasn't as a traditional Hollywood studio like all of the other, like Fox and Universal and all of them that made a lot of the old vintage movies. In fact, Disney really didn't get into live action movie making until 1950. So that's why they kind of brought in MGM as a property to kind of be able to tie in both animation, Disney's bread and butter, if you will, as well as classic old Hollywood films. So that's kind of why they brought the name Disney, MGM Studios in there. And so that's kind of one of the things that I guess we miss, right? Is
the fact that it was MGM. I mean, it just rolled off the
Yeah.
tongue a lot easier.
like me personally, I don't really have any affinity towards MGM in particular.
Yeah,
it's just what it was
not
called.
that. It's just the name.
And
was
so
so much
when they
easier.
changed it to Disney's Hollywood Studios, I thought that was a natural fit because basically it tied in, Hollywood with Disney.
Yeah, but now it doesn't really make much sense. It's kind of in flux.
Yes.
We'll get to that later, I suppose. But do you want to just like run into what we miss, or go over specific attractions that aren't there anymore? We can
how
jump
about
into
you start?
Well, okay. We can go to the other side of Echo Lake, where Superstar Television and Monster Sound Show were.
I love those. I went to those all the time.
Yeah, they really were super fun. I'm sure we can dig up some photos for Christian to put in on the show, or a video clip or two. You can check YouTube probably. But basically what that show was, in keeping with the theme of, Hollywood and making movies, this was how television was made. So they had little sets set up on the stage, where American Idol used to be and now is Frozen sing-along, I guess.
Yep.
And the cameras were on stage and everything, because they would film something and they would pick people from the audience to do the different
And they picked
skits.
a lot of people, probably as many as 30 different people in the pre-show. They picked to do different roles.
And there was a soap opera scene, and Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show.
That's
you would
right.
be pretending to be on with him. And
there was Dave Letterman on The Late Show.
Dave Letterman. And then the Lucy, I Love Lucy scene.
There was Cheers. There was also some news.
Just
some news,
a generic
some sports,
news thing.
And things like that.
Yeah. So if you
Golden Girls too.
Oh yeah, Golden Girls. That's right. So if you were there with your family and someone from your group got picked, you got to watch them on TV, and they would show you on the monitors what it actually looked like. So it looked like they were acting with the people. And my dad was picked one time to do the soap opera. I'm pretty sure it was a soap opera thing. All I know is he wore a trench coat and like a fedora hat, and he had to like take the hat off, and
that was
I
probably a
can't
fun
remember.
memory.
Yeah, it was very fun.
I was actually chosen a couple of times myself. The
I'm
thing that I
sure.
had done was the Dave Letterman portion, where they were kind of. I'm sorry, there was a couple of things, not just the Dave Letterman, where they were just asking people to push things off of a tall building, which is kind of one of his shticks. But there was also when they were doing the news part, where they were showing the moon landing, and they were having Neil Armstrong say his famous speech.
Oh yeah,
That's one giant step for man. And my job was to actually to be a cue card guy, holding it for Neil Armstrong to read, and accidentally getting into the shot and like realizing,
I
not
can
supposed
picture
to be
you
in
doing
this.
that in my head, and the
Yes.
face that you made.
It was fun.
Good times. So yeah, that was a fun situation.
And if you think about just even the cast members that were there, what they they were basically kind of corralling all of these extras and telling them all of the things that they needed to do to make it entertaining for the guests, basically dressing them and putting them in their outfits and kind of like where to look and all of this. And they had to do this for like 3 different cameras.
Yeah.
That were basically, it was just a nonstop thing. And so it was just something that's completely different than what they have at the park.
Yeah,
now.
I don't know that they could do that. That would be like a severe time drainer, I'm sure, on the people doing the accounting.
But
for
it
the
was
parks.
fun. It was a fun show, both to be in and also to view.
And then next door to that, what is
I think they
there
have like
now?
Path to the Jedi, or something like that, some Star Wars thing. This is also where they had the Drew Carey.
Oh yeah, Sounds Dangerous.
Sounds Dangerous
which was
show.
terrible. Sorry.
Yeah,
That
that's
was-
not really one
Well,
of the things
before
we
that,
missed.
it was Monster Sound Show, which
Monster
was
Sound Show.
a very funny, hosted by Martin Short and Chevy Chase.
Right. It actually starred Martin Short and Chevy Chase in kind of like an old kind of like a Frankenstein-y kind of a little movie.
Yeah.
It was actually, there was a pre-show that actually had David Letterman and Jimmy McDonald, which was the old Foley artist from the Disney Studios, who actually voiced Mickey Mouse after Walt. It was kind of a segment that Letterman had on his show, on his late night show. But then they went in and I don't remember if it was hosted by Martin Short and Chevy Chase, but it actually had the movie.
You how to do the sounds because you recreated
there were
them.
cast members in there that basically had that once again picked 4 people from the studio or from the audience to do all of the different Foley effects, all of the different sound effects for this movie that they had. And so they played the movie, and while that was playing, they showed, they were basically explaining, okay, so now you guys are going to have to make all of these sounds. And so then they played it again without the sound, and actually with all of the people attempting to make those sounds. And I think they did it in such a way that there would be a lot of comical results
because it never
there's
lined
no
up
way
properly.
that they could possibly line it up. Yeah. And so like a bookshelf would come crashing down, and of course they kind of signaled them a little bit too late, so it wouldn't quite line up, and all of that.
Comedy gold.
Yeah, and so then they played it back, the movie with the sound effects that they did, and it was hilarious. And then actually the audience even got to participate in one of the sound effects, which affected the ending of the show.
Oh,
that's
I
right.
Remember that.
So, but that was a fun show.
And then you got to go out and listen to the little weird sound effect headphones in those little.
Yeah,
booths.
it actually had one of those kind of the little sound booths that they now have over at Animal Kingdom,
which they
Rafiki's
don't anymore.
Oh, that's right.
Because when we went there for the Lion King celebration, it was just the drawing thing. Now, the Animation Academy.
Well, anyway,
you couldn't even get over to that section.
This was the beginning of those sound booths that had the super ultra surround sound, where you'd put on a little headphones and they would kind of do a thing where you were going to essentially meet the big cheese, Mickey Mouse, and basically it was like your day at the studio.
Blocked all
and
of that.
You got a haircut and you could hear the scissors.
Oh yeah, it was basically pre-ASMR technology.
Yeah, but it was quite amazing. But then they also had different booths where you could try to simulate sound effects for yourself from existing Disney cartoons and Roger Rabbit cartoons and things like that. So a lot of fun Foley fun.
Yes, that was fun.
Foley effects.
Then if we could jump across Echo Lake
and
go, I guess we could do the animation tour. If you want to do that, which is now...
That's way over on the other side, but yeah.
Launch Bay.
Star Wars Lunch.
I'm saving
Launch
Great
Bay.
Movie Ride. So yeah, I mean, I greatly miss this walkthrough because I think even when the Florida Animation Studio closed, it was still a great place to see the process of animation, basically like a little animation museum, if you will.
Yeah.
And you could always see like concept art for what was coming next, and then at the end they added like meet and greets in there, so it really made sense still. Yeah,
that was probably my favorite kind of the whole animation tour. It started by you going into a theater and you seeing kind of just how the history of Disney animation and all of that, and then there was a whole
Robin Williams.
That's right.
And
Robin
Walter
Williams.
Cronkite.
Meow meow meow.
Meow 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 meow.
That's right.
You can see that on YouTube
If
you have no idea what we're talking
with
about.
the Lost Boys.
Yeah. So they animated Robin Williams into a Lost Boy, which was really
cute.
cute.
It was in a little thing called Return to Neverland.
Yeah, which was then a movie later.
That's right.
But not with him in it.
So anyway, but that was just really a classic thing. And so then you were led out of that theater into essentially a tour along an actual arts, I guess, where all of the Disney artists
you were
were
in a little
actually
hallway, and the animation like desks or whatever were like kind of below you, but you could still see everything.
So through windows you
glass.
could see the whole process of animation, and took you through all the different stages, including the character animation, background, and
in-betweeners,
and effects and all that.
Background painting.
And so that actually took you, and they actually played more snippets of Robin Williams and Walter Cronkite talking about that. And so there were probably 3 or 4 different stops along the way. And mind you, this is an actual working animation studio at that time, because they actually made Brother Bear, Mulan, and Lilo and Stitch, plus the Roger Rabbit cartoons were made there.
Wow.
Plus, they actually also contributed to scenes from like Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and things like that. But that, I mentioned those 3 movies. They actually did those 3 movies in full there. So it's quite amazing.
I went through that many times, and I was never really, there was a few times where people were actually doing stuff at their desks, but a lot of times there were just desks there, but they were still fun to look at because they all had super fun things, little
just
maquettes
all the
figurines and just how they decorated their desks was fun to look at for me.
And then, of course, that ended with going into a different theater and seeing kind of like the highlights of Disney animation and, showing friends and love and tragedy, and then how good triumphs over evil. So it definitely tugged at the heartstrings.
Yes, I love a good montage film at the end.
That's right.
So that was fun. Also back there, which I guess are still there, perhaps preserved, they had the handprints like they had in front of the Great Movie Ride. Of
several of the 9 old
legends,
men were in there, like Mark Davis and Ward Kimball, Frank Thomas, and Ollie Johnston.
Animation Courtyard.
That's right.
That was that whole thing was called that. Is it still called that now? Animation Courtyard?
I think it's called Lunch Bay.
Star Wars area. Disney Junior.
I'm sure that's all gone by now. We don't make it over to that neck of the woods as much as we used to.
That's true.
Okay.
But also over there, which I don't know if you have this written down. I heard you mention Tutter before, but Bear in the Big Blue House was a thing that existed over there.
That's right.
But before that, I'm just now remembering, it was that Aladdin themed restaurant.
It was called the Soundstage Restaurant. Yep.
Was it Aladdin themed then?
It was not initially Aladdin thing. It initially was, well, first off, it actually came off with the movie Big Business, of all things, which is an old Touchstone film with Bette Midler and Lily Tomlin.
Yeah,
but
I actually saw that.
Then they quickly changed it to, it was Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin.
Half and half. Okay.
And I can't remember if The Little Mermaid was involved.
No, I don't think so.
I think it was just the two. Yeah, 2 of those. And then it kind of evolved often over the course. And at one point, it did become all Aladdin.
That should be a good Defunct Land episode.
Yeah, and that was that's actually where the camels that are now in front in the Magic Kingdom, where the Aladdin's flying carpets are. That's where those camels originally came from. The spitting camels.
Fact.
Well, actually, originally they came from the parade.
Yes.
That was the Aladdin parade that came. So, but we'll talk about that later. I'm probably getting way ahead of myself.
I know. We have to. It's turning into a 3-hour thing.
Yes.
But actually, when it was Soundstage Restaurant and it had the catwalk bar upstairs. Do you remember that?
I
probably
remember
didn't go there because you don't drink.
I don't drink, so I actually never really made it up there.
That was where I had
familiar.
My first alcoholic beverage on Walt Disney World property.
Wow.
Not my first one ever because I lived in Boston at the time. But yeah, so that was a fun memory, and no one ever knows where that is when I say that.
I mean, I know kind of there's the little stairway by the elevator.
Now it's like Club 33 is up there now.
Oh gosh, things have totally evolved so much.
Yeah, so after the Aladdin thing, which I guess was like a character dinner probably. I never went to it, but we did walk in there before to see that it was like half Aladdin and half Beauty and the Beast. I'm assuming it was a character dinner.
I actually don't remember if they had character. I think it was just themed that way, and that they just had. I think it was just a quick service restaurant.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, then it closed down and became. Was it Disney Junior already?
There was Mickey's Playhouse.
Oh, Mickey's Playhouse.
Yeah, they had Mickey's Playhouse, and actually, I think that's when they even had the Bear in the Big Blue House. I can't remember the exact order, but then it became the Playhouse Disney.
Playhouse Disney,
so, yeah.
Yes. Bear in the Big Blue House was big with my now adult children back when it came out, so we did attend that show.
Yeah, I didn't go too many times, but
it was fun with all those things, and then it was constantly changing, and then we kind of stopped going to that because they got older, and then I honestly don't know if Gio ever went to one because
Well.
at that point I was like, I'm not doing these shows anymore.
Yes,
Sorry,
there's
Gio.
only so much that adults could handle in those, because they were really geared towards very, very young children.
Oh, look, here's the camels. This is on Walt Dated World.
Okay.
So the camels were outside of the restaurant, and they had like, I think it was a breakfast situation.
But anyway, so I do remember that, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But they also had, I have to tell you something.
I'm listening.
Remember the Voyage of the Little Mermaid? And I know that we can get to what was there before, and we'll do that with Here Come the Muppets. And it was even part of the tour, but we'll get to that. But I got to tell you something about Voyage of the Little Mermaid.
Okay.
In the past 20 or so years that it's been there, it has been severely cut in length. Both the show has probably been cut in half.
Oh, and the pre-show, yeah.
But the pre-show has been completely, it's been cut entirely. Yeah. But they used to have this wonderful pre-show where you would walk in there and there would be all these nautical themes all over the wall. And there was a whole pre-show where a lot of them would light up and basically have like all of these magical effects that would take place, where it was almost kind of haunted. Like I remember there was a ship in a bottle with like a whale that would come to life in kind of the whole pre-show. And I needed to mention that because that's just something that a lot of people don't know about. And
yeah, I'd forgotten about it till you said that.
And I wish they had not cut that. And also, the whole show being kind of sliced in half over the course of the years.
Yeah,
it's
I can't remember the last time I went to that, honestly.
Yeah, it
because
used to be quite excellent.
Of that.
But anyway.
But it's still there.
Yeah.
Now,
in
some form.
I'm sure that it cannot be much long-lived because there's got to be something else coming. Especially
they could update it even.
Yeah, they could. But anyway, before that, in that space where the Voyage of the Little Mermaid is now, there used to be Here Come the Muppets.
Yes.
Which was a kind of like one of the very first Muppet shows, even before the Muppet Vision 3D was there. They actually had a stage show with Muppets that were they
huge.
They weren't just the little tiny Muppets that they were basically like human-sized Kermits and Miss Piggies and all that, and that was very odd.
Yeah,
I do remember the monorail coming crashing through the wall at one point because I think that was driven by Animal of all things. I remember Lily Tomlin was there in her little kind of crazy the phone operator character that she plays.
Oh, yeah. The one ringy-dingy thing.
Yes.
Wow.
But you remember that one?
I do. I actually did go to that in 1991, my senior year of high school. Mm-hmm. Every year my high school did a senior trip to Cancun. Okay. But there was a group of us drama kids that were like, we don't want to go to Cancun. We want to go to Disney World. And so we started the first ever senior trip to Disney.
Fun.
And my mom was one of the chaperones because she's like, you're not going to Disney without me.
There you go.
So, yeah, we saw it during that time, and I took a million pictures.
That would have been
at
the very end of its life because in that same year, that's when the Muppet Vision 3D opened.
Oh.
And I just happened to be there.
Maybe it was a trip before that then. I don't know. I did.
I mean, it was that first couple of years. So,
yeah.
And my first visit was in 1990, so it had to have been either 90 or 91. So. But
yeah, it was a fun thing. But then, I mean, I think my favorite thing to do was the backstage tour. Backlot.
Yeah, it used to be a big honking thing.
Yeah, and I had no problem committing to it.
Yeah,
ever.
It was like 2 hours, like a tour that they actually combined the tram with the walking.
Yeah, and they would have signs up warning you and people announcing that there's going to be no bathroom breaks and all that.
They did have bathrooms in between the two, but yeah, there would be long stretches where you were either on a tram or on a walking tour.
Yeah. And
yeah, there were some really fun things in that. I remember the, what was it called? The props studio, the props warehouse. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
They had it was a portion of the walking tour, but
It was kind of just like the queue getting to somewhere, wasn't it?
Yeah. The queue was kind of going. Well, it didn't just stop in there. I'm sorry, it didn't just walk through there, but it did stop at one point. They pointed a few things out.
Oh.
But because it evolved.
I'm thinking of when the walking tour was no more, I guess.
Right. It did evolve over the course of its lifetime, but there was a part where you did walk in there, and it was kind of square in shape, and so all of the audience would be in basically in various places throughout, and if you just kind of looked up in the rafters, you might be able to see a prop from like an Indiana Jones movie or an old Disney film or things like that. It was just chock full of props.
Which part was first in the original thing? The walking
the original
tour
was
or
actually the tram tour.
Okay. I mean, that was my preferred thing because I liked driving around.
So I guess we should talk about it in that order, because back in those days, places like the New York Street were not accessible. They were part of the backstage parts.
You would get on, I mean, you can probably do the...
Yeah, they actually, even the places where, even the load and unload places of the trams has changed probably 10 times over the course of its lifetime.
But basically you would get on and then it would start right away in the like costume building or something, wouldn't it? Or no?
I don't remember if it's... Yeah, I think that was pretty early on. You would go through that
because you would go around
tunnel
and say, like, this is the nursery or whatever. They called it something else. I forget what. Where they had, like, topiaries, and they're like, they're grooming trees to put in things. And then you would make that U-turn. Yeah. They'd have the miniature Earful Tower that you would see made out of topiary. And then you would go through the costume warehouse.
Which was a long tunnel that actually went through the actual costuming building. And
you would see costumes and people working on costumes, and it was a big warehouse with windows. And then also in between the sections there would be like displays with whatever the movie du jour was, like the Dick Tracy Madonna costumes and stuff.
Julia Roberts' Pretty Woman dress, and like the Whoopi Goldberg's Sister Act habit. And
then you would get to the props warehouse and the central shops also.
That's right, where they would build lots of other big things.
At one point, I don't remember which part it was, but there would be on the right-hand side the plane from Passenger 57.
That's right.
That they would use, and you could see the seats in there, and I guess there was probably other props that you could see.
And I should say, even before the plane that they had there, they actually had the millinery was actually on that site as well, where they did hats.
Oh, I was like,
which was part of the costuming building. They actually had the milliners on that side.
Wow, I don't remember that.
Yeah, they weren't there too often, but that's where they did their hat making skills.
There was never anything major going on in the Central Shops thing, I guess, because they were probably working at the one over in Magic Kingdom or near Magic Kingdom to do like real stuff.
No,
every now and then
that was the real stuff.
Well, I never saw anything fun happening.
Oh, that's too bad.
But it was still fun to drive through.
Yeah.
And so then you would go and start to see like the boneyard of old vehicles and
I remember that, like, they had a lot of the vehicles from the third Indiana Jones movie and The Last Crusade.
Yes.
Was there a lot of Dick Tracy vehicles, Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah. And the Flight of the Navigator.
Oh, yes.
Thing.
The pod from that.
That was fun.
Oh, yes. And then, of course, that went to... And actually, I should say, before that, you could see the back of the neighborhood.
Oh, did I skip the whole neighborhood
thing?
I
forgot. The whole...
Yeah, that's true. You would drive down Residential Street after the warehouses. Wow.
A Residential Street, just for those of you who didn't know, there were, I believe, 7 houses that were built there in various styles of architecture that were actually used in the exterior shots of various programs like Golden Girls and Empty Nest.
House, the Empty Nest House, which was the spin-off of Golden Girls.
That's right.
They had the Alice's Adventures in Wonderland
which was
house.
a Disney Channel TV show.
And that one had like the Frisbee on the top of the roof.
And then there was also the one from Ernest Saves Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
A movie from 1990 or 1991, something like that.
So they were on both sides of the street, and they had full, front lawns, and
so
everything was
looked just like a
painted
residential street.
Yeah. And then so you would make that turn to the boneyard to see the vehicles and stuff, and then they would say, by the way,
those houses you looked at, they're not real.
Yeah.
They're just facades.
And there would just be nothing behind them.
And everybody's mind would be completely blown.
Yeah.
That was back before we just, back in the days when we did not.
You were young
know.
and innocent and
Yes.
didn't know how things worked. There was no behind the scenes anything.
Yeah, none of that stuff existed.
YouTube didn't exist.
Yeah, DVD extras did not exist.
And then, of course, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, I don't think.
No, I guess not, because it does Catastrophe Canyon. So when it first opened, your driver, a live human, was telling you that we couldn't get in to see it because they were filming today. And then he's like, oh, we got clearance. We can go through. They're on a break. And so you would drive through to the Catastrophe Canyon thing, and then...
And we'd have to be extra careful because, this is a live set, and, we don't want to touch them because they're just on break. So they're going to be back at any minute.
Yeah, and then, the bridge you were on would start to shake.
Yeah,
and then...
wait, what's going on?
I think you would hear action, right?
Yeah,
you'd hear action
and
the
action.
clapping.
So, wait a
clapboard.
minute. They're not on break. They're actually filming, and we're stuck here.
Yeah. So, in the beginning, they really played up that it was really happening. Oh my gosh, now we have no control over what's going on. And, of course, there was, an oil train... I can't speak.
Oil rigger.
An oil tanker thing truck caught on fire.
And kind of slipped and almost fell onto us.
And so then there was flames coming on this side and flames coming on this side. And they were really hot. I remember being like,
it
oh,
singed your eyebrows.
And then water came from somewhere.
Giant
and there was
waterfalls,
a deluge.
Would come from both in front of us and kind of behind us and kind of over us. And if you were in the right seat, you would actually get kind of wet.
You would. But the fire got put out. And then they were like, and cut or whatever.
That's right.
And then people would be like, let's get out of here before anything else happens. And then they would be like, actually, this is,
we
a working
planned
set.
all of this.
And then they would tell you the air cannons could blow a basketball over the top of the Empire State Building and stuff like that.
And it often did.
But towards the end of its life, they kind of just would drive through and not really even say... keep up any pretense that anything was actually filmed.
As you were leaving originally, you would then pass by the next tram, and you were urged to.
Oh, that's right.
Keep it down.
Don't tell them what's going to happen.
But then the tram would then go on New York Street and all of that.
Well, in the beginning, it did that circle around Washington.
Oh yeah,
Washington Square, where that had the arches, and that would be the end. It would stop right there, and then. Soon after that, it would go down New York Street, and there was a whole Dick Tracy situation happening.
That's right. When they painted the buildings in that very unique style.
Yeah.
The Dick Tracy style.
And there was Dick Tracy cars going by and people shooting at each other. And they're like, oh no, we got to get him. And then you were safe or something.
I love that movie. Not a lot of people did, but I did.
And I don't remember where you... ended up after going down New York Street.
They also had the Bulldog Cafe from The Rocketeer.
At the end of Residential Street. This is my shirt if you're watching on YouTube. From the, 25th anniversary of The Rocketeer?
Remember.
It says it on my sleeve.
20th. So there you go.
At the end of Residential Street, they had it was not what they used in the movie. It was just a makeshift thing because you could see it from driving by. It did not last a long time. It was falling apart very quickly. But if you've seen the movie The Rocketeer, it looked like the Bulldog Cafe. Yeah.
I think it was the exterior, but it was not the interior.
Oh,
they used it for that.
In transport, it got damaged, and living in Florida, I think.
Absolutely.
It did not last very long.
But it was fun because it was in that kind of California crazy architecture style. It was a cafe shaped like a bulldog smoking a pipe.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Fun times. And linking to The Rocketeer, which had a lot of nods in Disney MGM Studios.
We'll get to
Still
some
has
of those.
A few there now.
But let's stay on the tour.
So, I don't remember where you ended up if you went down.
They had a special exit that was kind of near the props warehouse.
Okay.
Which is kind of it's actually They actually took you to that place where they had the special effects, not special, the crazy effects like you might find at Toontown at Disneyland. With
those things
with
in the laughing.
Yeah, the Acme warehouse, I guess it was.
Yeah.
Is what it was, which was a thing from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. They had the Dipmobile.
Yes.
And they had all of those.
Because you would drive by that, and then
the
you could go out and see it on the other side. Yeah.
So.
and then
that was kind of like a basically in between the tram portion and the walking portion.
Yeah.
Because
you could take a break and then hop back on, I guess.
That's where you'd begin the walking tour.
Yeah, I mean back on the tour, not like on the tram.
Okay.
But also in that area they had the splash fountain.
Yes.
Which I guess is gone, right?
It's gone.
That's sad.
It is.
That still exists in my head until I actually get to the park and I'm like, oh wait.
It's not just a fountain that splashes. It's a fountain from the movie Splash.
Yes, with a mermaid.
With Tom Hanks. So there you go.
And Tom Hanks took a bath in that fountain.
That's right.
No, I'm just kidding.
I think it was Daryl Hannah.
Oh.
But yeah.
Well, I meant the one in studios.
Madison. Anyway.
Yeah, we're getting distracted. So the walking tour then took you to the Inside the Magic, not the website, the tour, which showed you all of the latest technology, special effects of the time.
Oh, yeah.
The late 80s and early 90s, which had things like green screen and blue screen technology.
And also that outside water.
Oh, yeah, the special effects tank.
Yeah, the special effects tank.
Which that stayed even when the inside part closed down for a long time.
I got to be with the volunteer at that one time and got water splashed all over me of the little tugboat captain.
I know someone that worked there back in the day. I never volunteered because I did not want to get soaked, but it was fun to watch.
It was.
And they would, pretend that you were just going to get a little wet, and then they would dump a whole bucket of water on you.
Yeah, they would have all of these crazy splash cannons.
Yeah.
That did the thing.
But it really was. They really did show you also how they did like special effects water things, like making a miniature ship look like it was a real ship on the ocean, and how they
that for the War and Remembrance or Winds of War. It was kind of like a 2-part miniseries.
Oh.
Back in those days. So
I'm not a war movie fan. Ships. So. But yeah, it was fun. Whether they actually did those techniques or not.
They did. I don't think they did. They don't think they filmed them there. But
no.
That's okay. But then that took you to the prop warehouse, which I had earlier mentioned.
Yeah. So the first one, I think, had like all of the... I forget which one had the bee in it, but one of them was
the next one had the
okay, so the first one was like the miniatures, I believe, where it would show you a lot of Dick Tracy stuff and how they filmed things in miniature that looked real.
And using matte paintings as well.
Matte paintings, yes. And things like they showed that scene, the train scene from Dick Tracy.
That's right. With the famous Peter Ellenshaw backgrounds.
Yeah, and it looks like he's going to get hit by the train, but then he doesn't.
But
he was never in danger to begin with.
I know.
And you would be up on sort of like a catwalk ramp going around all of the things. And in those rooms, they had a ton of other props and just things strewn about to look at. So there was never,
Yeah, I like to be able to go to different ways and kind of see if I could spot different things.
I have some of the Dick Tracy casino chips from that room.
Interesting. Not sure how that happened, but okay.
I cannot reveal my sources. And then the next room would take you to the... I don't remember if it was blue or green screen at the time.
It was blue.
Blue screen. And there was a giant bee on there, and they would then take... audience volunteers.
That was from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie.
And reenact that scene and show you how you looked like you're flying on a giant bee or you're tiny. And then you went into...
you actually went a little bit higher and you got to see the things that were whatever was being filmed in those in the three sound stages.
You don't believe me. I should have done research beforehand. I'm not going to look it up now, but Wheel of Fortune did film there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There was something you didn't believe me on. I can't remember if it was that or...
I don't know. Might have been that, but I do know that it was there. I know
did,
they had Star Search there.
Yeah.
They had
Well,
they
anyway,
had
they had
Let's
a lot
Make
of
a
stuff.
Deal,
Oh yeah, they did
which I
specific things actually filmed there.
Yeah, and I was in that once, and I got to play a fireman, and I won $10.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Very
it was
crazy.
on one of my days off, but yeah, dressed like a fireman.
And then later, of course, that turned into the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire thing, which I
That's right.
literally
Play it.
never went into.
Not only did I make the hot seat, because I had the fastest finger, but I got 13 of the 15 questions right.
What did you win?
I won a medallion.
Oh, did they not give away like real money?
No, they would have given away a cruise had I won the whole thing. But
the newly formed Disney Cruise Line.
Yes, on question 14, I got to phone a complete stranger. They had a phone set up on the street outside, and it was funny. One that it was about Greek mythology. And I had to ask a complete stranger about it, and I had no clue, and I missed it.
I don't think
my
that would
family
work
was there,
today
and they
either.
got to witness the whole thing. It was
Wow.
a lot of fun.
I'd never wanted to do it because I did not think I could perform under pressure.
Yeah,
like
I
that.
was.
Whether or
I
not
was expecting to
I
just
did
go
well
like 7
watching
or
the
8
show.
questions, but I actually did pretty good.
Wow. Well, someday you'll get on Jeopardy and it'll be great.
I'm hoping.
But back in the day, it was all of those things, and you could just walk by and see them through the top of the window, and then you would go through the sound effects section, which was hosted by
Mel Gibson and
Pee Wee Herman.
That's right.
Who later became problematic, and that was closed down.
Whoops.
But that was always fun because you got to hear, I guess Mel Gibson was chosen because of Pocahontas at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Pee Wee Herman had probably recently done the Star Tours voice of Captain Rex.
Yeah.
And it just has a fun voice in general.
He was also in the Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe he was
that's right. At the end, they used to have those, like, Jack head maquettes. I was really into Nightmare Before Christmas. So whatever year that was that came out, I guess 94.
Yeah, but all of that happened before then. So
yeah,
it was, so it was not from that.
Well, they take a long time to make.
I think it was
stop
just because
animation.
it was just his Playhouse. It was probably Pee Wee's Playhouse.
Maybe. We'll never know. Anyway, you walked through that, and then at the end of that, you got to see the lottery movie. That was just standing up and watching that, right?
Yeah, you got to go through they showed that.
They showed the lottery movie, which you can see on YouTube, I believe. They should
with Bette Midler.
Add it to Disney Plus.
Absolutely.
A very short film filmed on New York Street in Disney MGM Studios. And you saw the film. It was funny, great, whatever. Then you go through the doors and you see like this whole crazy set.
Yeah. With
that you
basically
can walk
tons
through.
Of the props that were all throughout there, and it had like a little catwalk that went all the way through it. And
because you had to get back down because you had gone up this whole time on those various ramps.
That's right.
And that was really fun. You got to see the giant pigeon statue that they had. Sorry, that's a spoiler.
I was just going to say they did change that over the course of the time. They had like
101 Dalmatians.
Narnia was in there. A couple of other things.
The Narnia thing was different, I believe, that was where One Man's Dream
was adjacent to that.
Next to that. And that was just like a walkthrough from the ground. Like you didn't have to climb anywhere or do anything. It was interesting.
It was.
And that's what I remember when we did our Epcot future of Epcot episode. I said that's what I think the Mary Poppins thing is going to be like, a sort of walk-through Mary Poppins experience. Who knows if I'm right or not? I'm sure I'm not, but it would be fun to me. I did like walking in that and seeing all the snow and the little lampposts, but it was kind of a letdown outside of that. There wasn't really too much else going on in there.
That's okay.
Anyway,
at the end, so that actually, the lottery actually led then into the sound effects booth thing, which then led into the final theater. Then, which is the final theater, which has that the fun intro with Michael Eisner and Mickey Mouse going to see the dailies, the daily theater, basically showing what was kind of filmed that day. But what they actually showed was kind of like coming movies that were going to be in theaters soon, but it had that fun intro show that they had there with Chernobog and all that.
Oh yeah,
remember
wow.
that?
I had blocked that out as well.
And Roger Rabbit, of course, being crazy.
Yes.
But that was always fun and that's basically where the Walt Disney Theater is now.
Which is crazy to think about. That's where you ended up.
Yeah.
And then over time, when they basically did away with the walking tour, you ended up, when the trams dropped you off, they built that AFI showcase museum thing.
Right, that's right.
And gift shop.
And that was interesting because they always had fun movie props there.
Yeah, and they changed them out every now and then,
That's
so
right.
you had a reason to go back and see things. And that's where I saw all the Nightmare Before Christmas. Not all of them, but they had a whole section of like the town.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had a whole case of like 300 Jack heads with
That's
all
right.
these different expressions. And I thought it was cool because I liked Nightmare Before Christmas back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, that finishes up the back lot and walking tours, I believe. And, of course, we would be remiss if we didn't mention that that whole area, Residential Street, New York Street, was the ground for the Osborne family spectacle of dancing lights.
Right. Which it should be noted that actually originated on Residential Street. Do you remember that?
Yes, I said Residential Street.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You were writing.
I was writing
notes.
that. Basically, what I meant was it evolved from Residential Street to kind of what most people remember is New York Street.
Yes.
But I do remember that happening. That was interesting because you actually got to walk on a thing that previously was a forbidden zone, that you could only take the tram. But I believe they did have to close it up, to dress it up for the lights. But that was very interesting. Essentially had all of those houses that
and you could walk through them, and they had the snow going. The snow machines were all down the street. And then you could see the yards were all decorated, and they would have like the bikes that were strewn around on the grass.
Yeah, that was back when they only had like 1 million lights before they upped it to like 10 million or whatever. That was great.
And I guess it was before they were dancing, really, because originally it was just the Osborne family.
Yeah, they only had the dancing lights on New York Street.
I don't even know what it was originally called.
It was just the Osborne Festival of Lights.
Festival of Lights. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became dancing.
That's right.
And
on
spectacle.
But the thing is, because of where it was on Residential Street, it really did take quite a bit of walking to get to to place, to go all the way all along Residential Street, because that area was not really close to a front stage area.
No.
It was all very backstage. But it was, having seen it both on Residential Street and then on New York, Street, that was, just to see the evolution of that was
and then
neat.
they later added that like California, San Francisco area with that matte painting that made it look like it was going up a hill. So they had that whole section to do.
I think they at one point had New York, Chicago, San Francisco.
Wow.
I think they had basically
I didn't know Chicago was involved.
Yeah. When they added San Francisco, I think they also added Chicago. And
it got so crowded that they had to make it, like a one-way situation. Yep. They wouldn't let you go in anyway but through the Star Tours side of things. Mm-hmm. And that was annoying. But, it was fun, and you could shuffle through.
A lot of people miss that very dearly.
Yeah. But as I was saying on our recent Legoland vlog, there's so many places that do dancing lights now. It's kind of like, I know it's not the same thing, but
that was probably the best of them. But
yeah. It was just because there was so much of it. It was kind of a magical thing to walk through.
And it was a yearly tradition, too.
Yeah.
So
I have many photos of my tiny children looking up at the snow, and very cute.
Aw.
Oh, good times. I guess we can head over to the Great Movie Ride next,
Ooh.
perhaps.
The great movie.
The most recent of lost attractions. Perhaps.
Honestly, this is one that I thought was the signature attraction of the park. I thought it was untouchable.
I don't think you were alone in that sentiment. I think it was a very big shock when that was announced.
Yeah.
I guess except to the people that knew.
It's essentially, the signature attraction. It was basically kind of the evolution, not the evolution, basically everything encapsulated into one attraction.
It was great movies in a ride.
Yeah. Very good point. It had your westerns, it had your sci-fi, your romances and fantasy and all of that. All there.
Yeah.
Musicals, everything.
And really, I don't think, surely over time people thought like, well, they really should update this. And they did update the ending montage scene
Several
a couple of times.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people wished that they would do a new scene. But everyone would always say, well, then what would you take out? Because,
good point.
But certainly no one ever thought it would just be gutted.
Yeah.
I guess we can be thankful that the building on the outside will stay the same.
Yes.
And we certainly have many wonderful memories of getting to actually walk through the attraction without
got to do that a couple of times. Yeah.
the ride vehicles going through, which was a very fun experience. They could hold special events in there. You could do like dessert parties and things like that. But then I guess D23 did an event as well. So,
They did, yeah.
And we've been there a handful of times, I guess, because of all those different types of things. So yeah, it was really very special to be able to go through and see that.
And to see all the different kind of the little hidden bits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my favorite scene was the Indiana Jones scene because that's one of my all-time favorite movies. But just being able to walk through there and kind of see the Ark of the Covenant up close and all of the...
Yes, we took a photo or two.
Hieroglyphics, and including the hieroglyphics with the hidden Mickey and Donald and the hidden R2-D2 and C-3PO, all from Lucasfilm.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever seen the C-3PO one on the ride, and I finally got to see it when we were walking through.
That was super cool.
We have a few photos we can probably throw up there to share, including one with me next to James Cagney.
That's right, James Cagney.
Which was only one event they let us do that. For the other events, they were like, no, you cannot stand next to him. Get down.
My favorite thing, of course, was, the differences between the gangster scene and the Western scene, and basically kind of having the live action aspect to it.
Yeah,
and
it really was unique.
Having our car abducted from a movie character.
Yeah.
And having our driver kind of kicked out to the curb and then either taken over by a gangster, a live action gangster, or a live action Westerner.
Yeah, and it really did make or break the attraction, depending on what kind of cast member you got.
Yeah.
You could get a really good one that was super into their role, or someone that was just going through the motions.
And that's both the gangster Westerner and the other driver, the main driver.
Yeah, exactly.
So I very much like that. And I think I preferred having the Western scene because I liked it when the bank blew up.
Yeah, because
all
fire.
that fire
Exactly.
come off. Yeah.
Although, shooting at the light and saying no more red lights is always fun.
That's right. We'll see about that, kid.
What else do you have in your list? Are we going to have to break this up into 2 episodes? Or?
I'm thinking based on the amount of time that we're talking, although I don't think this is going to become an Epcot scenario where it's going to be
I mean, I feel like I'm almost done. Do you have like a million other things to say?
I do have a million other things.
It'll have to be a Scott-only episode.
It won't be a Scott-only episode because I think you'll join me in a lot of these.
What else do you have to say?
I have a lot of things, and I think what you're going to have to do is stay tuned for episode 2 because that's apparently what's going to happen here because I've got a lot to talk about.
I mean, I could just read these off and we could call it
Well, we could do that, or we could probably stretch this out into a second episode.
All right, I guess we'll have to.
What do you think, kids?
Oh, we're getting the thumbs up from our studio audience. So.
It's already been what, an hour and 50 minutes by this point, something like that?
I don't think quite that much. But yeah, we'll have some more interesting stories and details. I have my Princess Diana story to tell.
Oh my gosh.
From her
I don't think I know that
1993
one.
visit. You know that one. It's on my blog. If you're waiting between episodes, you can go read that on zannaland.com.
Oh yes, I do remember it from there.
That was back when I watermarked all my photos. I need to find the originals of these photos, I think. Anyway, we thank you for listening to what has now become part 1 of our
I promise this is only going to be 2 parts.
great MGM Memories ride.
Yes. And I think we've got a lot more memories because, as I said, I spent a lot of time there.
You did, yeah. You haven't gotten into your Rocketeer situations and all that, so I guess we do have more.
Yes, I will have to
But
tell
this
you
was a
about
good
my Rocketeer
overview
episodes.
of most of the park, but not all of it, I guess.
I think some of the bigger attractions we've covered, but I think there's
Yeah.
Still a lot more.
A lot of details and what has been lost along the way, perhaps.
Yeah.
So you can leave us a comment in the
Oh,
meantime
yes,
and tell
please
us
do.
what you miss about Disney MGM
Yeah.
Studios, or currently Disney's Hollywood Studios,
That's right.
or Disney Studios briefly.
That's
Remember
right.
when that was a thing? We'll get into
like
that.
a minute.
So if you have not already, you can subscribe to us on wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can subscribe on youtube.com/Zannaland, where
That's
you
a
can
fun
watch
place.
us look at each other and say, what? You have more to talk about?
And me like pulling out my hair and throwing paper all over the place.
Oh my
and
gosh.
and
Dogs and
poking
cats
at you.
living together. What else? We thank you again for listening. I said that already.
I was going to say also go to Zannaland.
Yeah.
Where there's all kinds
I
of
will link the things that they can
the fun blog posts
read about.
and also where you can subscribe to all of these things and visit all of these places.
Leave comments. Let us know what you remember or don't remember.
That's
Do you
right.
remember any of these things? Are we all too old and we're the only ones that remember these? I don't think so. I think if you're listening to this, you probably have an interest in Disney history.
I hope so.
and know a thing or two or remember a thing or two.
Yeah, but maybe there are some fun surprises in here too.
Perhaps. But for now, we will have to go back down the waterfall, I guess, because we're done.
No, we're going to go back up the waterfall.
Thank you for joining us up the waterfall. We'll be back next week.
That's
with
right, for more.
Another waterfall situation.
More studios fun.
Thanks for listening.
Up the waterfall.
That is absolutely fantastic.
Well, that's only part of it. You got a big climatic scene.
But how could you top it?
Well, we set the place on fire, and we have our audience trapped down in this flaming city.
And how can they get out then?
Well, now you got into this mess by going down a waterfall. Now, how would you suppose we get them out of there?
By going up the waterfall?
That's right. Anything's possible in Disneyland.